it is. It's a way to kind of up the vibe, because that's what we do here at Soul Center. We up our vibe, and we are here to increase our bandwidth to hold more good and more God moving to and through us. That is our purpose. If this is your first time here, welcome. We are Soul Center, part of the Agape Association of Communities, which means that we are part of the New Thought community, and we celebrate the golden thread found in all religions and all of the mystical teachings. And that golden thread is the thread of absolute truth, and the absolute truth that knows no opposite, that is found in the mystical teachings of Judaism and Christianity and Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and shamanism and a lot of other mystical teachings around the world that I haven't mentioned, but they're there. There's that golden thread, and we honor that at the highest vibration of pure excellence. That is what we honor. So we are an all-inclusive, all-embracive community. Steeped in a vibration of prayer and meditation. That is the cornerstone. That is why we're here. This is a vibratory, active field. This is an active field of prayer. Imagine, most of us kind of think of prayer as something where, okay, I'm going to turn within, we're going to get very still and quiet and meditative. But imagine prayer alive and living and thriving and moving as an omniactive presence of God, which we know God to be bliss beyond our wildest dreams. And that is what we are here to celebrate. We're here to celebrate that. We celebrate that and honor that. Part of that includes the empowerment aspect of it. In some of the old paradigms of some religious practices, they would leave some of the praying up to like the minister or the pastor or the rabbi or something like that. In our community, we embrace having a individual experience of the divine to and through and as your life, because this is where the juice is. The juice is when you experience your own magnificence and your own revelation about God, about truth, about bliss. This is what we cultivate here, and we do that in our service, we do it in our classes, we do it in our events. So I'd like to welcome you as we close out the month of letting it go. This is our month of letting go, and today's topic is positively positive. And the positively is pausing. Every once in a while life will deliver us a pause, where we have to kind of, it seems like maybe things dry up, or certain people disappear, or opportunities seem to vanish for some reason or something, and we get to move into what we call the pause. And the pause is an opportunity for us to take inventory and see what's going on in our lives, and connect with dominion over our lives, and remembering that in our community and in our teachings, the dominion over our lives is a whole 180 degrees different than taking control over your life. Control is usually the lowercase c, and that's where the ego is trying to manage things and control things, and if this happens, then I'll be happy, versus if I'm open to dominion, where I've surrendered into a place of really understanding, like it was saying in the reading, of truly, what is it like to truly let go? And in the Zen Buddhist teachings, where it's more the art of non-attachment, which doesn't mean you're some sort of airy-fairy, like, oh, it's all good, when something catastrophic is happening. It means that we're not attached to the world of effects as much as we are to the eternal world of the divine happening to and through and as us. And to do that, we need to know who we are. Most of us identify with our age, our gender, maybe our race, somewhat of our religion, somewhat of our community, all of those things. And they all have a wonderful and glorious place in life, but that's not who we really are. And the journey of wholeness, as we start to uncover, as it was talking about in the reading, and we kind of align that with our beautiful holiday of Halloween that's coming up, with the masks that we wear. And I know there was a mask making class last Friday where we were exploring. This is the one that was made for me. And even though it was just recently made, it represents smallness. because that was one of the masks I used to hide behind, was being smaller than I am. And what I mean by that is, it's kind of like in Marianne Williamson's quote where she says, our deepest fear is not, we don't fear what we're not, we are most fearful of who we truly are. The magnificence, of course I'm paraphrasing because hers is much more elegant, but that we are afraid of who we truly are to access that power. And there are certain reasons that we sometimes avoid that power, and so part of our journey is to find out, okay, well, how do I access that power? And we access that power by allowing ourselves to release. And one of the ways, if you look in all of the religious teachings and all of the mystical traditions, there's a time where we go into fasting. We just finished with Yom Kippur just not too long ago in the Jewish tradition where you would fast. During the time of the new year, you would fast. In all the traditions, whether it's in Christianity around the time of Easter where we do some fasting, or whether it's Islam, or even in Sikhism where they fast once a week. And so there's the literal fasting, and when you look at fasting in terms of people, today it's very common, and I go, why don't you fast? And I say, okay, and I'm getting all good inside. But what we're doing in that is we're giving ourselves a place to recalibrate and to get an adjustment with our perception so that we can see what it is that needs to be released. So sometimes it comes as though life gives us one of those situations where there's a pause that's created and there's a space that opens, and sometimes we embrace that space a little incorrectly where we think, oh my God, everything's been dried up and it's leaving, and it's like, no, this is a time to rejoice and to celebrate. And as a matter of fact, the reason that all of those mystical teachings use fasting in a particular way, and it's more than just fasting your body. It's fasting yourself. You want to take a moment, and we want to fast maybe from social media. Maybe we want to fast from the news. And then maybe we also want to fast our bodies. Our bodies, any time that we're experiencing discord or disharmony in our lives, or we're experiencing dysfunction, you can be well assured that something on inside of us has been overwhelmed and put into overdrive, and there's a little bit too much efforting, too much trying. And the ego is a real big fan of efforting and trying, even when it tries to convince you that it's not a big fan of efforting and trying, because anytime it's trying to keep something constrictive, restrictive, or negative alive in your life, then it is efforting. And efforting consumes a lot of energy in your body. And so to cultivate this through fasting, where you literally take time, and that's what we do when we go into meditation. When we go into meditation, we are fasting from the world of effects, and we are moving into the eternal world of the divine, and we are allowing ourselves to be inspired by your higher self. It's not like there's something, we all know in our community, there is no God, the man in the clouds with the beard, who may or may not grant your wishes if you are a good person. There is the divine of the omnipotence and the omnipresence and the omniamorous that is everywhere in every space, that loves you beyond your wildest dreams, that knows you better than you know yourself, that loves you better than you love yourself, that sees you as this brilliant, magnificent being of light. And even though that kind of sounds like I'm saying that there's something outside of us that sees us that way, that's only because in the realm of duality, which we're here, we don't want to deny, because if we weren't in the realm of duality, then there wouldn't be solids or gases or liquids or even sound. There would just be this presence of a bliss that we would be bathing in. And that presence of bliss is with us every moment of every day. And when I was younger, so you'll see as we start to embark on our journey, and it's kind of like in the Matrix when, did I take the red pill or the blue pill or whatever? And it's like, okay, am I in a real reality and am I in a fake reality? What's going on here? And so we're trying to align ourselves with the capital R reality that takes us into a higher elevated place. And every single person, there's not one person on the planet, we all know this, there's not one person on the planet that is ill-equipped to become an ascended master right here, right now in your body. You have everything you need with you. You go everywhere. It's like It's kind of like, I think you heard me say a few weeks ago, like your cell phone, there's all these things on your cell phone that you can do that you don't ever use. There's probably like at least 1,000 things that it can do that you don't use. There's more than that going on in your own body right now. There's a mystical master in here that has the keys to the kingdom if you should choose to access your magnificence. And so when we move into the fasting, when we move into the pause, the positivity, we start to give ourselves room to access, like, well, where are those masks? And so when I was younger, and most of you have already heard how I was teased and bullied, etc., etc. And so I used to put on certain masks, and one of the masks I would put on was, it became exceedingly important for me. Now, this was when I was sleepwalking. I didn't know I was doing it, but I felt compelled. I had to get the coolest clothes and the coolest shoes and the coolest sunglasses because I was making an attempt to fit in with all of the cool kids. If I could look cool, then maybe they would accept me as cool. And it had a little potency on it, not too much. And I wasn't aware with what I was really after. If I had known back then what I was really after was feeling included with people that are loving and kind and generous, if I knew about the law of attraction to a degree, and even more so the law of emergence, and I started to cultivate that and got to know the true me, because that mask was hiding parts of myself that I didn't know existed, parts of myself that I had made bad and wrong. And most of us do that. We come up with these false personifications of ourselves to come across to people as this or as that in a way that allows us to deny the truth of who we are. And then as we move over to the other end of the spectrum, there's parts of ourselves that we sometimes try to glorify. We try to glorify, aren't I great in this and aren't I great in that? If I have like a really good gift, it is possible, maybe you see it sometimes in celebrities who might be really good at singing or performing or acting or whatever it is, and they might put themselves a little bit on a pedestal where it's like, yes, you are all that good, but if it doesn't contain humility and sincerity and authenticity, then it can come across as arrogant. And that would be more associated with the ego. And so in all of our spiritual teachings and practices, we're finding that sweet spot in the middle where we come in and it's like, okay, how do I? So there are some people, and this used to be me, I used to be the president of this club, I used to deny some of my gifts and qualities so much, I would hide. I was a hider. I was always the quiet one that would, go seek into the corner. And part of that was, some of the trauma in my trauma body, the one who was always the last one picked for whatever the sports activity was, because I wasn't really into sports, but oh well, I still wanted to belong, so it still really hurt when you're the last one picked. And it was, if I could wave my magic wand there and I would just go bing, and I would make it so that it's like, okay, well, let me be able to identify with what it is I truly want, and maybe I could just identify with the feeling of inclusivity. So even if you don't want to be part of it, it's nice that people are there like, hey, we still love you, we still want you, we still whatever it is that you want to do. The way our community is. Our community, we want to accept you and love you right where you are, and we want to empower you and grow you. And part of that is coming into a self-awareness that we can differentiate between the parts of our beingness that are hiding behind masks, even to know that we have a mask that we could be hiding behind, and then turning into the part where it's like, what is the magnificence within my own beingness that wants to seek to rise up and be expressed into the world? And so part of that is, along the journey, is to sacrifice certain things. And if you look at the core of the word sacrifice, it's to make sacred. So in the fasting, what we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to let go of certain things or sacrifice these things, to make sacred these things, so that we can open up into a place for something that's greater and grander and more magnificent than you could possibly imagine, becoming more one with our own selves than ever before. That is the journey to wholeness. We come into this world where wherever we are, the package that we chose these packages. You chose to be a man or a woman or a race or have certain religious components associated with, there's reasons that we picked these things. And as you start to align with the soul energy of your own higher self, you're like, oh wow, that's fascinating. And then you start to get things in divine perspective. And divine perspective just means that now I'm going to align myself with the law of creation, of that which is also associated with the law of emergence, that is what is seeking to emerge and express through me into the world. And then you also become aware of the oneness that we all share. You always hear in our metaphysical and spiritual communities that there's oneness, we're all one, and we know that science has even come to the point where we know that the butterfly effect is real, that things ripple out across the time-space continuum. We have proof in it. We have proof just in our own technology, just by picking up your cell phone, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, do we ever stop to think? It's like, that information we know somewhat to some degree. It's like, oh, it shoots up to one of those transponders, it shoots up to a satellite, it shoots back down to another transponder, and it shoots back over to a cell phone, and voila, I'm talking to whoever, I'm FaceTiming with whoever, and it's just this beautiful experience, right? But what's it traveling over? Well, we could probably say it's traveling over the air, but there's something it's traveling through, and this that we call air is where there are so many mysteries. Even with the mysteries of dimensions are right here. All of the different dimensions of the different ways that you can experience things are all happening right here, right now. We already know that from quantum science, that it is already happening in a way. So when we start to grow, we move off of a linear paradigm. I'm walking down this road, and maybe I've been a victim of this or that for so many years, and then all of a sudden I start to do my spiritual practices where I'm evoking particular energies, and I'm participating in these energies, and I'm realizing that I have certain masks that have held me back. And it's super gentle, and it's super powerful, and it's super magnificent if we go ahead and we tap into that, as we tap into it. And that's what we use prayer for. Meditation is where we open, and we can go into the fasting zone, where we deprive ourselves, and by deprive meaning relinquish attachment to the material world of effects, and we move back to the beginning. In the beginning is where everything starts. In the beginning is God. And so we move to God, and we allow ourselves to participate in that. And remember that, sometimes those masks that we created were there to protect ourselves. I had certain masks that I would put on to protect myself from certain things. It was a false sense of protection because it didn't really work. And so all of a sudden, when we become humble enough and vulnerable enough and soft enough, when we become soft enough, that's when we can open up to the power within that's going to strengthen us. And I will tell you, oftentimes, that divine vulnerability will make you feel a little wobbly. It'll make your legs feel like they're going to come out from under you. In the softening, in the vulnerability, tears can come up sometimes. But it will strengthen you beyond your wildest dreams, because when you rise like the phoenix from the ashes through a softening and an expansion, when you rise from lack and limitation into infinite benevolent potential, and you always know whenever I'm talking about infinite potential, we're talking about infinite benevolent potential, because in the world of infinite possibility, you can tell right now just by turning on the news, infinite possibility means infinite of all kinds of crazy things that you can see going on in the news. Infinite possibilities of people hurting each other, calling names to each other, whatever it is, and so that's part of infinite possibility. Infinite benevolent possibility means you're in alignment with the expression of how you can express, that's a divine language right there, out of the mouth of babes, that's where that comes from. Because they're connected, when you see the kid, they're like, because they're still connected to the infinite realm, and they can see beyond the human eyes. And we don't want our eyes to get so solidified, or our ears to get so solidified, that we stop hearing the voice of the divine, the voice of your soul. And so my charge would be that we're all seeking to make the most important thing in our lives the evolution, the self-realization, the self-awareness of who we truly are. So that's the intention, and then that's going to bring up those masks that we carry in our lives, that we pull in out of our pockets, like this one, you know. And you can see in this mask, and I think Jessica told me a little bit. So, okay, I wish I could say I made this mask, but Jessica made it for me because I couldn't be at the party on Friday night. And it's beautiful, it's just the way I imagined. But you can see kind of there's some glitter poking through, because even when you put a mask on, you can't hide the light that's under. You can try to hide it, but you can't hide it all the way. And there are those of us that as we move into our spiritual evolution, we're going to move into the next stage of our spiritual evolution. Part of that spiritual evolution is we become aware of our own masks, our own limitation, and we never ever make ourselves bad or wrong. It would just be, okay, oh, wow, I've got maybe this going on where I'm limiting myself in this area, I play small over here, and this is what and I'm not going to beat myself or make myself wrong. I'm then just going to move into like, okay, I want to evolve into an authentic empowerment from my soul. And as we're moving through that, and we're becoming stronger and more open and more of who we truly are, and we're anchoring that, we're grounding it, and remembering that when we anchor and ground, we're grounding heaven on earth through us, because we know that there's no heaven over here and earth over here, that the divine light of heaven is with us everywhere we go. And so we're anchoring that, and when we get to have a certain spiritual moxie within us, then we're able to look out into the world and be of such service, and to see with God's eyes, and to see, oh, I can see the masks that other people are wearing. And then when I'm having an enlightened conversation with somebody, then I'm able to hear with God's ears, and I can hear the subtext underneath what they're saying, as opposed to the surface words of what they're saying. And then I'm really moving into empowerment, and that's true compassion. True compassion is when you are empowered and never diminished in any way, shape, or form. So true compassion isn't the ego's version of compassion, where it's like, oh, that's terrible, I'm so sorry, and oh yes, we need to do something about that. True compassion means, I get it. I get where you're coming from, and hey, now you might not be able to say this at a particular time when you're having a conversation with this person, but inside. But it's like, hey, we're going to turn to the divine strength within that knows this isn't a breakdown, this is a breakthrough. And we are opening up to that in our lives and in the lives of everyone else, because we aren't separate from anybody. We aren't separate. These beautiful packages that we come in, these costumes, it's kind of like, can you imagine? I know back in the 50s, back in the 70s, I think, but there was a show in the 50s, the Superman show, the black and white one, with, I think it was George Reeves, and I was not able to watch that first run, just FYI. But there was this urban myth that he, because he was killed by gunfire, it was apparently, they were saying it was self-inflicted suicide, and then there was this urban myth decades later that flew around that's saying, oh yeah, George Reeves, he was so into his character as Superman, he really started to believe that he was invincible, and he tried to see and shoot himself with a bullet because it was going to go bounce off of him, and that was the urban myth, which is not true, but that was what floated around. And it kind of says, yeah, do we ever get so full of a mask that that's what we really think we are? Because doesn't it sound insane to think that if an actor or an actress who is portraying a particular role, like Superman or one of these superheroes or whatever, and then went out, got off the set, it's like, ding, we're done, cut, okay, and then they go out and they just keep their costume on, and they go out into the store, into the malls, into the restaurants, and they're just wearing their costume, and I'm like, here I am, I'm just Superman. I'd be like, okay. And it's like, all right, well, that's what happens. We do that. We go out into places and we hold our masks on and we're portraying a false persona of who we are. And so we are going to take a moment and we're just going to tap in. We're going to tap in. We're just going to do a light exercise. So if any of you were in the mask making class the other day, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and we're just going to put our masks on. And if you don't have a mask from the mask making class, and it wasn't just a mask making class, it was a spiritual evolutionary class that was tapping into the making of the masks. And also remembering that masks aren't a bad thing. When you know you're playing a temporary role of something, great. We just don't want to get lost in it. So we're gonna if you'll join me, if you don't have one, we're just gonna put our imaginary mask on. And imagine that that's covering us. I don't know, have any of you ever experienced, like, sometimes, I know I used to have this experience, like, if I was driving and I was wearing my sunglasses, I felt safer if I wanted to, like, give somebody a dirty look or something, because, I could hide behind my sunglasses, but if I took them off, I felt, oh, I'm so vulnerable now. And it's kind of like we're tapping into that a little bit. We're tapping into allowing ourselves, but in this case, so we're going to just go into a very soft moment here, and we're just going to see, is there a mask? Is there a mask within my beingness that it's time for it to come off, or that I'm just to become aware of? So I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes and turn within for a moment. And as we move into the stillness, we just take a moment, and we are deliberately opening our hearts, our bodies, our minds, our souls to the grace, the truth, the light of God, the light of our soul. And if there is anything within us, any false persona that is trying to protect us, that is trying to conjure up something that is not who we truly are, we just take a moment and we allow ourselves to just see, is there a mask that no longer serves me, that is time to relinquish, to time to let go of? If there an aspect of my personality, whatever it is, without judging it, without making it wrong or bad, or is there just some aspect of lack or limitation in my life that I'm ready to let go of? Any smallness, any constriction around wellness or prosperity, any constriction or masks around relationships or self-image, anything at all that would constrict me from knowing the truth of my own divine nature. Just open to that, and we don't necessarily need to know exactly what it is. We might just get a hint of colors or feelings or sensations, or you might have a knowing that shows up as a name that comes with it. Whatever it is, we just open without judging it, and we turn our attention to that which we call the let go in this pause field of whatever it is that we would like to let go of, to surrender, to give to the divine for transmutation, for release. This is how we let go and let God through us. And so I invite you to surrender and imagine you're letting go of any part of that in your life that would constrict, restrict, or demonstrate as lack or limitation in any way. Any judgments, we allow them to go, we allow that to release. And as we open into this field for release, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and just either take your imaginary mask off, lifting up to your face and then taking it off, or take the real mask off. And we're going to just take it off, and with a gesture reaching up as though we were just giving it to the divine before we slowly and gently bring it down and place it in our lap, we're going to open up to the divine quality that's underneath the mask that is seeking to reveal itself. What divine quality, as you rest your mask in a comfortable place and open to what's beneath, what divine quality is seeking to rise up from within me? A gift, a talent, a strength. And we give it permission to shine through us. The energy of our soul, we give it permission to shine through us. And it's going to be a new experience as we harness the strength, the quality, the gift, the talent. So I invite you to just without judging or analyzing, without limiting in any way, shape, or form, just allow yourself to connect with the vibratory field of some magnificent quality of your beingness that is seeking to arise from underneath that mask. And as you do, we're going to go ahead and just turn within to this prayer field. We take a moment in this fertile field of infinite benevolent potential and possibility. We open our hearts, our bodies, our minds, our souls into the field of gratitude. Gratitude is a vibratory energy that accepts the good into our lives. And so we open to that acceptance, to that goodness, and to the revelation and knowingness of the eternal truth that the light of God, the grace of God, the beauty of God, the strength of God, the omnipotence, the omni-magnificence of God that is everywhere, indwelling and outpicturing